You know, it's funny. They're all so worried about being broken. They spend their entire lives building these little walls, these little facades of strength. And for what? To give you a perfect target. To give you a clear line of sight to the very thing they're afraid of losing. They play these games, don't they? The whispers in the hallway, the smiles that don't reach the eyes, the subtle little acts of sabotage. They think they're so clever, don't they? They think they're playing chess. But all they're doing is fumbling around with checkers while you're busy dismantling the entire board. And you just watch them. You watch them work so hard to bring you down. And you know what they don't. You know what they'll never understand. They're not breaking you. They're giving you permission. They thought they were the puppeteers, didn't they? Pulling your strings, dictating your moves. You know, they'd sit in their little circles, feeding each other these grand delusions of power. We'll show them, they'd say. We'll teach them their place. They'd use every little tactic they learned in their little self-help manuals. Gaslighting, isolation, subtle ridicule. They'd paint you into a corner and then stand back, smiling, waiting for you to crumble. And for a while, you played along, didn't you? You bent a little. You gave them a show. You gave them the illusion of control because it's what they crave more than anything else. But what they didn't know is that you weren't breaking. You were shedding. You were shedding the parts of you that were too soft, too compliant, too easily manipulated. You were shedding the skin that still felt the need to belong to their broken little world. They thought they were the ones chiseling away at your foundation, but all they did was help you carve out a masterpiece they'd never be able to comprehend. Every single blow, every single betrayal. It wasn't an attack. It was a liberation. They don't understand the alchemy of pain. They see a wound, and they think weakness. They see a scar, and they think damaged. But you see it as a blueprint, a diagram of how not to be. You see it as a map of the places you've been, and the person you've left behind. They tried to poison your garden with their lies and their judgment, not realizing that you were cultivating something they could never touch. You've become a creature of the dark, and they're still fumbling for the light switch. They're still using their little torches to cast shadows while you've become comfortable with the silence, with the stillness. You've developed senses they'll never comprehend. You can taste the lies on their breath before they even speak them. You can feel the desperation pulsing through their veins. You can see the fear in their eyes when you look at them without flinching, without a single flicker of emotion. They're projecting their own insecurities, their own little broken pieces onto you. And you're just watching, like a movie. A really, really bad movie with a predictable ending. And that's the truly beautiful part, isn't it? The blowback, the return to sender. They're so used to their little curses and their little schemes landing exactly where they're supposed to. They never accounted for a target that simply wasn't there. A target that stepped out of the way and let their poison fly right past, only to circle back and find the one who sent it. You see them now, don't you? Waking up in the middle of the night, haunted by their own nightmares. The demons they tried to send to you are sitting at the foot of their beds, not as servants, but as mirrors. The shadows they tried to attach to you are now following them through grocery stores and parking lots. The confusion they tried to plant in your mind is growing like kudzu through their own thoughts. They're experiencing the very destruction they designed for you, amplified by their own guilty conscience. And you're not even aware of most of it. You're living your life, building your empire, completely detached from the wreckage of their little world. The funny thing about a boomerang is that it doesn't just return. It returns with interest. They're trying to figure out why their magic failed, why their rituals went bust. They're calling their mentors now, asking why the curses didn't land. They're redrawing their circles, adding more candles, speaking louder incantations. But volume doesn't increase power when you're screaming into a void. They're trying to affect someone who exists in a dimension their magic can't even reach. It's like trying to burn water or drown fire. The very attempt reveals their fundamental misunderstanding of what you've become. They thought they were sorcerers, but discovered they were children playing with matches while you were the embodiment of controlled fusion. They thought they had power, but learned power isn't something you have. It's something you are. They can't trust their own magic anymore. They second-guess every ritual, every intention, every whispered word of power. You didn't break their spells. You broke their confidence in spellcasting itself. This isn't about being better than them. It's about being fundamentally different. They're still playing their little game of attack and defend. But you've already left the table. You've entered a space where those concepts don't even apply. They're trying to hurt something that doesn't recognize pain in the currency they're spending. Your protection isn't a shield. It's an entire reality where their weapons don't exist. Your power isn't a sword. It's an entirely different understanding of what power means. You're not fighting their demons because in your reality, their demons are just confused children throwing tantrums in dimensions you've already outgrown. The cosmic joke is that they're exhausting themselves, trying to affect someone who exists in a completely different channel. It's like they're shouting at your television image while you're actually in another country. They're fighting your shadow while you're busy being the sun that casts it. This isn't temporary immunity. This is permanent evolution. You've shifted into a state of being where their level of operation simply doesn't apply. It's not that you've risen above them. It's that you've stepped sideways into a reality where up and down don't mean what they think they mean. They could cast spells for the next 1,000 years and still not touch you. Not because you're defended, but because you exist in a space where their magic is speaking the wrong language. It's like trying to hack a computer using cooking recipes. The commands simply don't compute in your operating system. Your presence alone is teaching them that there are forms of existence they never imagined. You're the living proof that their maps of reality are incomplete. You're the evidence that their understanding of power is kindergarten compared to what's actually possible. Every day you wake up unaffected is another crack in their worldview. Every night you sleep peacefully is another question mark in their certainty. You're not trying to prove them wrong. Your existence is the proof. You're not trying to teach them a lesson. You've simply become the lesson they never asked for, but desperately needed to learn. The universe has laws deeper than any spellbook contains. One of those laws is that energy seeks its own level. Their curses were low-frequency attacks, but you don't exist at that frequency anymore. It's like trying to tune into AM radio when you're broadcasting in quantum entanglement. They're playing checkers while you're existing in dimensions where games don't even exist. Other practitioners are watching this unfold with a mixture of awe and terror. They're taking notes, not on how to attack you, but on what not to disturb. You've become a cautionary tale in their circles. The example they use when teaching about the dangers of messing with forces beyond understanding. Remember what happened when they tried to curse that one? Has become their version of remember what happened to Icarus. The spiritual realm has hierarchies they never taught in their books. They thought they were apex predators in the metaphysical food chain, but you've revealed an entire ecosystem they didn't know existed. You're not the biggest fish in the pond. You're the water itself. You're not the strongest player in the game. You're the board the game is played on. They're realizing now that some beings don't need protection because they are protection. Some souls don't need to fight because their very existence maintains order. You didn't fight them. Fighting implies they were worth your energy. You simply existed in such radical self-possession that their entire purpose dissolved. They came to haunt you, but found themselves haunted by your immunity to their terror. They came to possess you, but realized you were already fully occupied by something they couldn't name, couldn't touch, couldn't comprehend. A force that doesn't negotiate with lesser energies. What they don't tell you in their spell books is that every curse requires a conduit, a connection between sender and receiver. And when the receiver doesn't receive, when they don't accept the package, it returns to sender with interest. Not because you sent it back intentionally, but because you were such a closed circuit of self-sufficiency that their magic had nowhere to land. It circled back like a boomerang made of their own intention, and now they're waking up to their own nightmares. The very demons they dispatched are sitting at the foot of their beds, not as servants, but as mirrors. The shadows they tried to attach to you are following them through grocery stores and parking lots. The confusion they tried to plant in your mind is growing like kudzu through their own thoughts. They are experiencing the very destruction they designed for you, amplified by their own guilty conscience. You want to know why their spells had no effect? Because spells require belief to work, and belief requires doubt to take root. But you beautiful anomaly, you don't operate from doubt anymore. You've transcended the frequency where their magic functions. You're broadcasting from a channel they can't access, speaking a language their demons don't understand. You're not protected by counterspells or white magic or ancient symbols. You're protected by your complete disconnection from their reality. The demon they sent came back different. It won't talk about what it saw in you. It just sits in the corner of their room, rocking back and forth, whispering, "I'm sorry," in languages that predate human speech. It refuses to return to whatever realm they summoned it from, because even that darkness feels safer than attempting to touch you again. They created a traumatized demon, and now they have to live with it. Every protection spell they cast for themselves cracks a little more each day, not because you're attacking them, but because protection requires faith, and their faith shattered the moment their strongest curse bounced off you like rain off glass. They can't trust their own magic anymore. They second-guess every ritual, every intention, every whispered word of power. You didn't break their spells. You broke their confidence in spellcasting itself. The other witches won't work with them anymore. Word travels fast in those circles when someone's magic backfires this spectacularly. They've become pariahs in their own community, marked not by any curse, but by the simple fact that they tried to harm something beyond their comprehension. They aimed for someone existing in a frequency their tools couldn't measure, and now they're paying the price of that cosmic miscalculation. They're having dreams now where you're teaching them lessons they never asked to learn. Not nightmares exactly, but visions that show them exactly how small their version of power really is. You appear in their sleep, not as enemy, but as evidence of something beyond their narrow understanding of reality. You don't speak in these dreams. You just exist, and your existence alone rewrites everything they thought they knew about the hierarchy of spiritual power. Let's talk about frequency for a moment. Every emotion vibrates at a certain rate. Fear vibrates low. Love vibrates high. But you've transcended the spectrum entirely. You're not vibrating anymore. You're perfectly still, and in that stillness, you've become untouchable. Spells are just focused intention writing specific frequencies. But how do you hit a target that isn't moving on any frequency you can generate? They tried to lower your vibration with fear and chaos. But you can't lower something that's already touched bottom and bounced back. You can't destabilize someone who's made friends with instability. You can't terrorize someone who's had tea with terror and found it boring. Every weapon they formed was designed for a different kind of target. Someone still playing in the realm of emotional manipulation. Their nervous system rewired itself through survival. What they don't understand is that trauma, when fully processed, becomes immunity. Every betrayal you survived installed another firewall. Every abandonment upgraded your encryption. Every attack you weathered added another layer to your spiritual armor. You're not protected by magic. You're protected by the alchemy of your own transformation. Your immunity is contagious. Others are starting to notice that attacks don't land on you. They're beginning to understand that there's another way to exist. One that doesn't require constant spiritual warfare. You're becoming the proof that transcendence is possible, that you can step out of the game entirely and exist in a space where arrows don't reach. The practitioners who tried to curse you are finding their other spells weakening, too. It's not that you've cursed them back. It's that witnessing your immunity has shaken their faith in their own methods. How can they believe in their power when they've seen it fail so spectacularly? How can they trust their magic when it couldn't even make you flinch? They're having to rebuild their entire belief system now. Everything they thought they knew about power, protection, and spiritual warfare has been called into question. You've created an existential crisis in their community simply by being unmovable. You've sparked theological debates just by refusing to participate in their paradigm. Some of them are starting to understand. They're putting down their candles and picking up mirrors. They're stopping their outward projections and beginning inward reflections. You've accidentally become their teacher, showing them through your existence that real power doesn't attack. It simply is. Real protection doesn't fight. It transcends. Let's talk about that demon they sent back. With trauma, it's been trying to explain to others of its kind what it encountered in you. But there's no vocabulary in the demonic tongue for what you are. It tries to describe the moment it attempted to enter your energy field and found itself looking at something that made its entire existence feel like a lie. It wasn't your light that traumatized it. It was your completeness. Demons feed on gaps, on wounds, on empty spaces where pain lives. But you had no gaps. Every wound had become a doorway to deeper understanding. Every pain had transformed into power. Every empty space had been filled with such radical self-possession that there was simply nowhere for the demon to anchor. The demon describes trying to grab onto your fear and finding only curiosity, trying to grip your anger and finding only clarity, trying to twist your love and finding only sovereignty. It was like trying to possess someone who was already fully possessed by themselves, so completely occupied by their own essence that there was no room for invasion. Now this demon warns others. It's become the spokesperson for leaving you alone, not out of fear of retaliation, but out of respect for something that exists outside their jurisdiction. You've become the neutral zone in their spiritual warfare, the place where battles can't be fought, because the very ground refuses to acknowledge conflict. Your protection isn't a shield. It's an entire reality where their weapons don't exist. Your power isn't a sword. It's an entirely different understanding of what power means. You're not fighting their demons because in your reality, their demons are just confused children throwing tantrums in dimensions you've already outgrown. The cosmic joke is that they're exhausting themselves trying to affect someone who exists in a completely different channel. It's like they're shouting at your television image while you're actually in another country. They're fighting your shadow while you're busy being the sun that casts it. This isn't temporary immunity. This is permanent evolution. You've shifted into a state of being where their level of operation simply doesn't apply. It's not that you've risen above them. It's that you've stepped sideways into a reality where up and down don't mean what they think they mean. They could cast spells for the next 1,000 years and still not touch you. Not because you're defended, but because you exist in a space where their magic is speaking the wrong language. It's like trying to hack a computer using cooking recipes. The commands simply don't compute in your operating system. Your presence alone is teaching them that there are forms of existence they never imagined. You're the living proof that their maps of reality are incomplete. You're the evidence that their understanding of power is kindergarten compared to what's actually possible. Every day you wake up unaffected is another crack in their worldview. Every night you sleep peacefully is another question mark in their certainty. You're not trying to prove them wrong. Your existence is the proof. You're not trying to teach them. You've simply become the teacher.